Games are often at their funniest when they're not trying to be, stoically keeping up the pretense of their realities when bugs, glitches, scripting errors, and unspooling physics engines cause all manner of immersion-breaking hilarity. But what about the games that dare to be funny on purpose? If comedy's all about timing and games are all about putting players in control of what's happening and when, that can make even the best in-game joke fall flat. Still, some brave pieces of software have managed to pull it off in the face of that adversity, and we've corralled 10 of the best to ever do so, from beloved classics to more recent hits, indies and blockbusters across a variety of genres. Trying to decide on a ranked list in order of funniness seemed like too serious of a task for the subject matter, and comedy is of course completely subjective, so your mileage may vary, but with that in mind, here are IGN's picks for the 10 funniest games of all time. Or at least 10 games that came out that had some jokes in them. With all the open-world mascot management simulation games constantly getting churned out, it can be hard to keep track of them all. But rest assured, Promise Mascot Agency is the best of the bunch. Made by Paradise Killer developer Kaizen Gameworks, what we have here is a town full of oddities, a van full of gas, and a story so convoluted and absurd that no description would do it justice, let alone make sense out of context. Even with context, it's still pretty weird. There are kittens in railway administration roles. There are weeping mascots doing their level best to cheer up the patrons of a bookstore. There's the constant threat of organized crime looming in the background while you hit a dirt ramp in your van, then watch it sprout wings and catch some sick air. In simple terms, you're a former Yakuza trying to lay low by operating a mascot business in the suburbs, juggling the constant time and financial pressures that come with it. It's narrative-led, but also totally freewheeling and nonsensical, and that gives Promise Mascot Agency the feeling that you're playing one big, elaborate open-world improv. And if this sounds like an especially bizarre sub-story in one of the Yakuza games, which are pretty funny in their own right, that's definitely not a coincidence. Promise Mascot Agency's protagonist is voiced by none other than Takuya Kuroda, best known for his performance as Kazuma Kiryu. A small sloth is experiencing a haunting. A welcome sign for an invisible wizard has been vandalized. Corruption is out of control in Cowboy County. Grave, deeply serious matters, all of them, which, as a frog with a magnifying glass, you must address. And yet, here Frog Detective is on this list of funny games. Granted, you don't often see detectives holding their sides and trying to contain their laughter on the job, but there's just something about peering at a crime suspect through a giant magnifying glass and seeing only a sheep in a short-sleeved shirt giving you a benign and unwavering smile. The mysteries themselves are brief affairs and exceptionally easy to solve. Instead of challenges for the gray matter, Grace Bruxner and Thomas Bowker's trio of Frog Detective mysteries are just setups for wholesome farces, soundtracked by surprisingly catchy lo-fi jazz and set in a universe of unwavering positivity and can-do attitudes. You might only be the second best detective around, but it's no mystery why these games are a good time. South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker have pushed the boundaries of good taste and common decency to hilarious effect across mediums, from cable TV to movie theaters and even on Broadway. So it should be no surprise that the duo were able to work their magic in the video game space as well with The Stick of Truth. Stone and Parker were deeply involved as collaborators with the role-playing masters at developer Obsidian for this razor-sharp 2014 RPG. A story about a new kid trying to befriend his peers during an elaborate game of fantasy LARPing, the duo's involvement lends it the same quality of observational humor about gaming that made Make Love Not Warcraft an all-timer of an episode.
Come on, let's do this! Yeah, my mom says I have to be in bed at 9:30.
Why does it work? Well, let's take farting as an example. If you're older than 7, you're probably not in a fit of hysterics when you first learn that farts can be used as an attack in combat. But the Stick of Truth commits to the bit and makes passing gas more than a passing gag, turning it into a shockingly detailed and nuanced mechanic to the point that you're learning new fart moves from NPCs like you're unlocking new dragon shouts in Skyrim. The Stick of Truth and its sequel, The Fractured But Whole, both translate the cartoon's low-poly aesthetics and puerile sense of humor into an interactive experience so faithfully that it feels like one long playable episode.
Na 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 na, we still control the universe.
Nobody suspects a thing.
How did you beat me?
Nobody suspects a thing. That's what the wonderful soundtrack for Octodad, Deadliest Catch keeps telling you as you do your best to maintain the facade that you're just a normal, everyday human husband and father and not, and I don't even know where you'd get this idea, an octopus wearing a suit. As core premises go, they don't get much better than that. There's a whole subgenre of physics-based slapstick to address when you're talking about funny games, and the likes of Baby Steps, Goat Simulator, and Surgeon Simulator deserve their dues. But nobody's married the physical comedy of an obtuse control set to a genuinely emotional premise quite as well as developer Young Horses did in 2017. As you blunder through quaint suburban locations like grocery stores, offices, and your own beautifully decorated home, trying to avoid suspicion by moving in as human a manner possible and knocking over the absolute bare minimum of objects with your flailing tentacles, the real hook is that you actually care about keeping Octodad's secret.
Don't worry, we're here for you.
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
If it wasn't handled so precisely, the Stanley Parable would be too meta, too confusing, and too pleased with itself to enjoy. But somehow it avoids such a fate, instead making walking along the same corridor over and over again feel like a delight, and hearing a new line of Kevin Brighting's silky voiceover has the same thrill as unlocking a new skill or acquiring a valuable item in any other game.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Precisely what the eponymous parable is depends on your particular playthrough. Stanley's experiencing a kind of Groundhog Day in which the only constants are that he wakes up at his desk in an office and that all his coworkers have disappeared. You'll live for centuries in some playthroughs, depending on seemingly arbitrary choices like going through one door or another. In other playthroughs, it'll all be over in a few minutes and you'll barely have left your desk before you reach an ending. The writing is playfully self-aware throughout as it deconstructs this whole interactive media thing, but the biggest joke of all is the silliness of its premise. Quite simply, how much game can one make about walking through an empty world devoid of characters and whose only interactions come down to choosing between forks in the road? Well, apparently enough to warrant an expanded Ultra Deluxe edition almost a decade later.
Stanley, it's a collection of reviews from Steam. Honestly, I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious and unfunny.
Between widespread lawlessness and the harsh realities of frontier life, there probably wasn't much to laugh about for those living in the Wild West, but it's certainly been a rich vein of comedy for everyone since, from Blazing Saddles, The Three Amigos, and City Slickers, all the way to West of Loathing, a black and white 2D side-scrolling adventure RPG with an incredible gag rate. Every book title, every item description, every NPC interaction, they're just all jam-packed with warm, clever jokes. So much so that as you play, you'll find yourself turning into one of those completionist maniacs that read every book in Skyrim or pieces together Dark Souls lore just to ensure that you soak up every last drop of the good stuff. West of Loathing is smart about training you to play that way too. In your home during the opening, if you look at enough books on the shelf, you'll eventually find one that grants you the perk of having a silly walk. From that point on, you know you've got to get your nose into every single monochrome corner of this Old West caper. The original Portal certainly set a high bar for humor in and around the Aperture Science test chambers and established an unforgettably menacing foil in GLaDOS. The only way to top it? A sequel featuring Stephen Merchant, a potato, and a double cross that nobody saw coming. Unless some idiot in an IGN video spoiled it while ranking funny video games. Anyway, Wheatley is comedy gold throughout, whose steady stream of color commentary ramps up from simple ineptitude to spitting absolute malice at you, all in that charming accent.
Don't touch anything else. Don't even look at anything else. Just, well, obviously you've got to look at everything else to find an escape point.
Finally, the absolute absurdity of a final showdown between one sadistic rogue AI trapped in a potato and another who is rapidly discovering their hunger for power is not matched by their problem-solving skills. Plus, there's a catchy song.
I used to want you dead, but now I only want you gone.
If they played it completely straight, Portal and Portal 2 would still be excellent puzzle games, but it's the addition of their distinctive whip-smart sense of humor that's the icing on the proverbial cake, elevating them to some of the best games ever made, period. So if you've never played them, this is your friendly reminder to go do so, and if you have played them, well, maybe you're due for a replay.
Yeah, I can't do it if you're watching.
Ben and Dan have a humble ambition. They want to watch a Magnum PI marathon on TV. Quite how this turns into a cataclysmic event that accidentally enslaves all of humanity is not easy to piece together, but it's the enjoyable heart of Time Gentlemen Please. It's also the kind of setup that an early 90s point-and-click would have been proud of, and developer Zombie Cow Studios is ready to give a reverential nod to many of those classic titles. There are posters for Sam and Max and Full Throttle dotted around on walls in the background. There's an undead kid called Gilbert, along with quoted lines from Ron Gilbert's Monkey Island series. But rather than retread that old ground for nostalgia's sake, Time Gentlemen Please gets its amusement by poking fun at the old genre conventions, like pointing out the inherent absurdity of carrying around massive inventories of random items in the hope that they'll be useful later. Of course, making a TV aerial out of a coat hanger and accidentally time traveling isn't that much less absurd. LucasArts ruled the 90s when it came to point and clicks, but it's 1990's Secret of Monkey Island where the most precious comedy gold is buried. Guybrush Threepwood might walk around telling everyone he's a mighty pirate, but his immutable golden retriever energy makes it difficult to believe that he's the one who will pass the 3 trials required for full pirate status, take on the dread pirate LeChuck, and win Governor Elaine's heart. Not to mention he's got a proclivity for stuffing objects into his pants, not exactly a regular swashbuckler. This was the game that gave us insult sword fighting, a verbal disagreement turned into a tense combat system that only Ron Gilbert's LucasArts team could pull off. It's also a game that manages to make early 90s pop culture references sit flush with age-old pirate fantasy. Thus, we have a tropical island where a fast-talking used boat salesman in a bad blazer is waiting to accost you and where vending machines line the streets. The puzzle logic might be up for debate, but its ear for funny can't be called into question even 3.5 decades later. Your first clue that this isometric RPG might not be entirely straight-faced comes in Disco Elysium's opening scene, in which your hungover protagonist can overexert himself reaching for his necktie and simply die. Game over, try again. That's a hell of a way to set a tone. There are also frequent moments of real pathos, horror, and tragedy in Zaum's 2019 RPG Masterclass, and they're so well written that it never feels dissonant that 5 minutes later, when you're smashing a truck window, one of the options is to smash it apologetically. Pleasingly, the funniest character in the game is you, the player, in control of an alcoholic cop who can't remember where he parked his car, it's in the ocean, and who, after asking his partner to borrow their gun, puts it straight in their mouth in front of the armed wing of a dock workers union. No matter how unseriously you take your role, Disco Elysium has a way of simply rolling with it without ever undermining the darker narrative beats when they arrive. So there you have it, that's IGN's picks of the 10 funniest games of all time, or if you don't agree with our picks, 10 games that came out that also have jokes in them. We hope you agree with our choices, and at the very least, we hope you're not angry at us for telling you about them in an effort to inform you about something that might make you laugh. What are your favorite comedy video games? I didn't actually write this list, I just helped turn it into a video, but they said that if I did, I could put some of my picks at the very end, so here's my personal top 10 list of funny games that didn't make the cut for this list of funny video games. Alright, here goes. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, Jazz Punk, Accounting Plus, High on Life, Postal 2, Untitled Goose Game, Saints Row III, the 2013 High Moon Studios Deadpool game, which is pretty underrated, Happy Wheels, and Drawful, which is much funnier if you have funny friends who are bad at drawing. But hey, that's just me. Let me hear your picks of the funniest games ever in the comments below, and for more games with comedy chops, be sure to check out our deep dives on the best, worst, and weirdest South Park and Simpsons games, and for everything else that takes gaming a little bit too seriously, stick with IGN.